Yeah, that, I don't know. If I was in that situation and I had to come back to a ranch and see everything that had to get done, I would like, my heart would like pound out of my chest. I'd probably work like crazy until everything was done too.
Well, there is definitely a lot of upkeep here that most of the things I can do, most of things, but the electric fence is not my, I can't do the electric fence. I can go out there and help him with it, but there's a lot of places where that it's a Gallagher high tensile electric fence where um, things will just quit working, and it's very hard to find the particular spot that's not working. So I do not like doing it. I can go up there and untwist the wires, if they're twisted, or if I see something that is definitely not right, I can fix it. But I don't even want to go back there and fix it because it's encircles our whole most of our ranch except for the
Mm-hmm.
back, the interstate pasture, which we call the interstate. And there's cows back there right now, but no horses back there because it's barbed wire. So yeah, it's a big job. It's a lot of work. And anyway, most of the time he doesn't have to. He goes golfing when he's home, and he did go golf on Sunday, 36 holes. So I was like, where is he? What are they doing? They're out playing golf. My son-in-law, Gabe Clark, and his friends were with him. So, yep.
Oh, I'm sure he had a big time then.
But yeah, it was hot. I couldn't believe they were out golfing that much. But it's a little bit cooler at the golf course. It's closer to the mountains. So I don't know why it stays cooler there. Maybe it's the water. Who knows? Anyway, golf. That's Buck's
Yeah.
thing now. He likes to go play golf. So, but anyway, I've been thinking a lot about stuff because I listened to Sarah the other day, and I listened to your podcast. I think it's quite good. Um, the I remember the podcast you did with Buck. It's like, Buck, why are you talking about all that chasing wild horses with Kurt Pate? You have so many more interesting things that you've done. That was the worst ever. That trip to the wherever we're Drummond, Montana, chasing those whatever they were feral horses. It was 25 below zero. I've never been so cold in my life as that day. I was like, what am I
Well,
doing? Oh, yeah, all the girls are going to come, Mary. Yeah, I was the only girl. So it was crazy. It was so cold. It ruined me. I'll never do anything like that again. It was too cold. They had to build a fire, and I had to take my boots off, and I had Sorel boots on to get my feet warm because I was so frozen down. I was like, what? This is crazy. Why are we doing this? Anyway, yeah,
well,
leave
if
that.
my memory serves correct, Buck did mention that you weren't crazy about that.
No,
So,
no. And,
man,
I don't mind winter particularly. I mean, I can handle it most of the time. But that was crazy. It was so cold, and we stayed in a seedy motel. That the owner he regulated the heat, so it was either boiling hot in the room or freezing cold in the room. I was like, "Let's go home. Let's get out of here." Anyway, it was quite the trip. But, but I did want to talk to you guys about the horses that we've raised. I keep track of most of them. We're pretty dedicated to the line of horses that we have. And right now we have three stallions. Our own son, well, it's actually Rietta and Gabe's own son of Highbrow Cat, our own son of Metallic Cat, and our own son of Patty's Irish Whiskey. So, and those three horses now we're not particularly breeding any more horses for our own use, but Rietta and Gabe are. But the line of horses that Buck rode the most was it was he bought a stallion. He brought a stallion home one day and he said, "Look, I bought a stallion." I'm like, "What are you doing?" No, 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 no. And his name was Passamani Celebration, and he was a son of El Cid, who was a stallion from Texas that never raced due to an injury. And then and the mare was a Passamani Paul mare, which Passamani Paul was the world champion running quarter horse in 1968. So this horse came from the brand inspector in Matizzi, and Buck just liked how he V'd up. So he brings him home. I'm like, "Oh, what are we doing? We're going to breed horses now?" So that whole thing was we're going to breed horses. We were going to have 10-day clinics at our house. We were going to sell them as 2-year-olds. We had 4 mares. Sell them as 2-year-olds to people who wanted to start a colt in a 10-day clinic, and then take them home. Well, that never happened. So we basically kept all of those horses. We had, my line of horses was Frosty Feature, and my mare was Frosty Feature out of a Sugar Bars mare. And so we bred that horse to My Leroy Brown and got 2 mares. And those 2 mares we bred to Passamani Celebration. And that's where Arc and Rebel and Guapo and all the tall horses that we have, Charo. There's quite a line of them, of horses that Buck liked. They're much taller horses than, they almost look thoroughbredy, but not, because they're pretty muscled. But anyway, that's how that all got started. And now we have Guapo, which that's where Billy Bob came from. Billy Bob was bred by a lady down in Douglas, Kylie Scott. She bred a mare to Guapo and got Billy Bob. That's what we call him. I don't know why I named him. That's a silly name, but that's the one Buck's been using in the Buck Champ colt starting. You saw him at the colt start.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's going to be a nice. I don't know what we're going to do with him yet, but we didn't have any babies so I wanted to have at least one to maybe promote Guapo, even though I'm not sure I want to do that, because I'm in charge of hauling the stallions to the vet, and then we take them to Powder River Vet, Candace Carden, and they collect them, and it's like a full-time job from April 15th to July 15th, and I haul each stallion in separately. So that's why I couldn't do the last podcast. But I'm on call.
Yeah. So Mary, for a little little time frame reference here, when Buck first brought the first stud home, was that back when you guys first got married? Like, when was that?
Yes. Well, let's see. We got married in 92. We moved here to the ranch in 93. Riata was born in 94. That was probably in, I'm pretty sure, like 96 that we went to Australia in 90. Yeah, it was probably 96 that he brought that horse home. So, and he was a really nice horse. But I hadn't been around too many. Well, I had been around some stallions that were fairly hard to deal with, kind of mean stallions. So I didn't want to mess with him. So, but I handled him. He was fine. We just would turn him out with the mares. I didn't really have to handle him. We didn't AI him to anything. We just kept him with our mares. But these other 3 stallions, they get collected. It's amazing. 3 days a week, 3 stallions separately. It's like a big job. But July 15th, I'm over it. So.
Yeah, I bet. So, with the studs you have now, how many straws are you guys sending out there with that many collections?
Well,
because I don't really know much about the horse AI deal. Yeah. I know a lot more about cattle.
Yeah, last year I think we started. I think there was 22 mares bred to Guapo, and 12 mares bred to Easy, and 10 mares I think bred to Cat's Emoji, which is the highbrow cat stud. So it wasn't a lot, but it was enough. And then we freeze whatever we have left over. So that way, somebody needs it, they can buy it from the vet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, like you said, it still sounds like a full-time job to me. I know when we were trying to set this up and you were telling me about your schedule, I was like, I think we need to circle back on Mary because she's got a lot going on at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and they call me. I'm basically on call. They call me.
Oh, wow.
They text me usually at 6:30 in the morning and say, "Hey, can you come? Can you bring Easy in?" Poor Easy, he's 24 years old, so I was ready to not breed him anymore. But he's such a nice horse. That horse has got the best disposition. He's so easy to be around. That and he's a son of Patty's Irish Whiskey, who the 4.6s had purchased from the Scots. and I just read that article. It was in Western Horseman. That our horse was purchased as a yearling by a man named Dave Graybert up in Meeteetse, and he actually started him in a buck clinic in Meeteetse, and then the horse went on to be I think he got injured, and then they team roped on him. They did a whole bunch of stuff, and then he ended up with some people over in Riverton, Darby Frank, and then they decided they didn't want him anymore. So Riata, of course, she gets involved in it, and she's the one that bought him. And I'm like, what? Wait, we're buying a stallion? Wait, what? No, I don't want another stallion. So anyway, we bought him, brought him home, and he just is he's such a nice horse. I just love him. And Guapo, we raised him, and Buck took him on the road for I think 5 years, maybe. I can't remember. It's all a big wash to me now. And so Guapo, the first year, he was kind of unruly a little bit because he didn't know how he was supposed to act. But now he's perfect. He's a perfect gentleman and doesn't do anything silly. The only thing is when they won't let me handle him off the trailer, which that part I don't like, because then they walk him through a man door, and then he gets, I wouldn't walk a stallion through a man door for anything, because he gets pretty excited going through the door. Like, whoa! Well, I would just walk him through a garage door. Anyway, it's all good. It's all over with now. So thank goodness.
So why? What's the nature of this relationship such that you're on call then? How does that work?
Well, what they do is the vet gets a call. They get they have like somebody will have a mare in heat, and so the vet call and say, "Hey, this mare's in heat. Can you collect Guapo today?" And that's why they call me and say, "Hey, can you get Guapo here?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm here." So I just stay home, hang out. So and wait for me. So anyway, Buck just walked in the car.
He's coming back to
He's
terrorize them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure at this point, a lot of our listeners have seen Yellowstone, and they saw that part where Jimmy's in there showing the general public how to collect a horse.
Oh, God.
Is that, like, just for the well-being of the listeners, is it that dangerous? And where are you at when that's going on? How many people are involved in getting that done?
I stand in the doorway, but it can be dangerous because if you have an unruly stallion, for sure, that's, it's kind of scary. But because they all wear flak jackets and helmets when they collect them. So yeah, I think I've seen some unruly stallions, but ours are so quiet that they just go right in, do their business. And Buck, what are you doing? Don't turn the television on. You just turned the television on.
Yeah, tell him no Steve Landvitz either.
Buck. Oh yeah. No Steve Landvitz. It's funny. So anyway, but I'll tell you. Let's see what I was going to tell you about Buck Brannaman. So in 1999, I just have this quick story. Let's see, when was the Horse Whisperer? 97. So the Horse Whisperer was 97, and Nicholas Evans wrote the story about the Horse Whisperer, and Nicholas Evans came to the clinic in Novato and kind of hung out with us and watched Buck, and so then he got the story of Buck, and he kind of put it into the Horse Whisperer book, but there's a lot of different things in there that were not, Buck at all. But so then we got to do the Horse Whisperer movie, and we all got to be in it, which was fun. But then in 1999, Buck, was that when you got hurt, Buck? I think that's when, 99. So September of 99, September 26th, wasn't the 26th, Buck got hurt his back. And then he was kind of hard to deal with, and he wouldn't go to the doctor. So then finally he goes to North Carolina, and he goes, I'm going to come home. He went to Asheville, and then got on a plane and flew to Denver, and I picked him up, and he couldn't walk. He couldn't get off the airplane. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So we drove up to Sea Lazy U. He couldn't. He got on the horse up there. We were doing a clinic for the Sea Lazy U, and he was like, I can't do this. So a friend of ours was there, Meg Soteric, and she said, you better go to the doctor, otherwise you're not going to be able to walk. So that kind of scared him into going to the doctor. So we drove to Boulder, went to the neurologist. They said, you have herniated discs. Had surgery the next day. And then he had surgery, and we came home, and he recovered for a couple months, and then he went into, he did physical therapy. And then he went right back to work in February, which is crazy. But 1999 was when the methane started on our ranch, which was really a terrible event. So we didn't have the mineral rights. So the methane gas companies came in to try to explore for methane gas. And they just came in and drug their equipment through our pastures, up the hill. I was like, Buck, what are we going to do? This is like the worst thing ever. And we didn't have any rights to, you can't, they just could explore whatever they wanted to do. So the war was on between Buck and Mary and the methaners. So Buck went back to work in March, and then I kept track of everything they did, took pictures, kept a diary. It was terrible. They did 11 well sites with 2 well sites on each well site, and I mean, just destroyed. It was so pretty back in the back of our ranch. It was very pristine, and they just drug, equipment up there and made a giant mess. It was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even believe it was happening to us. So then they didn't really find it. They found a couple places where they had gas, but there wasn't really any viable gas. So we filed a lawsuit against them in 2000, I think was the year, 2001. So then we filed a lawsuit, and they were still trying to find the gas, but they basically just walked away from it, left a huge mess. So then we filed a lawsuit, and we had a jury trial in Sheridan, which we actually won that case. And then they appealed it to the Wyoming Supreme Court, where what happened there, Buck? We won there, but then they file against the United States Supreme Court. So they went all the way to the Supreme Court with it, and we won that as well. It never got tried, but it went to the Supreme Court. Anyway, it was quite a war, and it took a lot. That's why my hair is gray now from dealing with all that baloney. But it was quite the. And then Nicholas Evans wrote a book called The Divide, which is also about Buck and Mary in the methane war. So they didn't make a movie about that, though. And it was quite the event. And we set precedents basically for the landowners to be protected, to have their property, done right. If they were going to explore for methane, they had to obey the rules, which they hadn't done with us. But it was it was a couple of years that were not very much fun. But so anyway, that's one story, the Brannaman saga.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's nuts.
So have the laws been changed at all?
Pretty intense.
Or do those companies still have the right to come on people's land to get at the minerals underneath the ground?
Oh no, it's eminent domain. They can come in if you don't have the mineral rights, but they have to abide by, the rules and regulations of how to go about doing it. So that was, we learned a valuable lesson. We actually couldn't get the mineral rights at first, but we did purchase some of the mineral rights. But now that is not something that's going to happen again. Who knows though? You just never know. But it was quite an event. And then Buck was always, are you leaving again? He's leaving again. Oh well, bye. Anyway, Buck, I told him, I said, I didn't want to say it in front of him, but He wanted to fight that fight. He was like, I am not backing down. What they did was wrong, and we're going to defend ourselves. So it was an expensive endeavor, but he really wanted to battle them. So it was good that I went up and took pictures of every well site, and it was they trashed our place so bad. There were cigarette butts everywhere. At first, there was not one single porta potty anywhere, and it's like, okay, what's happening? What are you guys doing? You're out there 12 hours a day. I know you don't have a porta potty. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was really, and so after we won the lawsuit, I was taking my middle daughter to college, and she went to Santa Clara in California. And as on my way home, I'm driving by where the arena is, and I see this truck going up the hillside, and I'm like, oh, now wait a minute, what's going on? So I drove up behind him, honked my horn, and it was a truckload of Hispanic men that were going to work on a well site. And none of them could speak English, and they gave me a card from their oil company, and they said, it said that they had the rights to come onto the land to drill another well site. I'm like, no way, they're drilling another well site after that whole thing with what we just went through. So the next morning I went up there. Sure enough, they're up there. They have a security guard up there because they were afraid of me, I guess, or Buck. The Buck, he was pretty funny when he was going through the lawsuit. But I said to the security guy, I said, hey, I noticed there isn't a porta potty up here. I'm going to shut you down right now. So I did. I went and shut him down. Anyway, and they got to drill 2 more well sites after the lawsuit. So, which was really, and it was ridiculous. They just went ahead and did it. There was no reason for it. Maybe they got some sort of government money to do it, but that was crazy. It really was. Buck was in the trial. Buck, when they cross-examined Buck, he was on point. He said, the guy said to him, "So you mean to tell me you can drive animals 2x2 down a road?" He goes, "Yep, just like Noah." I was like, "Oh, Buck!" I mean, the whole courtroom just burst out. He was pretty funny, even though it was really an intense situation. He handled it really great. So I was a nervous wreck. I did not like what we were doing, but it worked out.
Especially so was it just you and your daughters at the ranch at that time?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and everybody's like, you be careful. Oh, I'm fine. I'll just take my dogs with me.
Yeah.
I'll take my dogs with me. So that was, it was pretty, and Buck is so, I just wanted to say to you guys that he is so, what's the word for him? I can't even think of the word for him, but Ray Hunt was his mentor, so he is so dedicated to Ray. When I first met him, I thought, God, this guy, he talks about Ray all the time, constantly talking about Ray this, Ray that, Ray that. And I thought, what about Buck? He's so dedicated to the fact that Ray basically saved him from whatever life he might have had, or because the horses became his solace, pretty much. So he and to this day, he's so totally dedicated to Ray Hunt that it's very admirable. And Buck has given a lot of people opportunity to participate in his world, which there's a lot of people that have worked for us and have he's really taken them along where they could have their own careers. So he's pretty dedicated that way. He's always out to help people too as well. I remember I told him one time, I said, you got to really be careful with people that you got to pretend like they're all kindergartners. and how you would teach them because sometimes Ray could be a little gruff, and I never rode with Ray, but my sister did. So, but Buck was, at first he was kind of cranky a little bit, but not so much that he was. I mean, he was approachable, but I said to him, you got to be gentle with people. You can't just because you'll just stop them from learning, and what you want to do is keep them learning. So anyway, he took my advice. He got nicer.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway,
everybody needs that. Everyone needs someone who balances them out. So sounds like that was just what your role in that was.
Oh
just
my
balancing them out a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm the head chore girl. I balance them out. I'm the head chore girl, which I'm like, how come I get the job of being the chore girl? I was just thinking about that all today. How many bales of hay I've picked up and brought here. Now we have them delivered, but before, I used to go over to my friend Susie Puckett's house, and we would buy the stack of hay over there, and I would take the flatbed truck over and load it, and then bring it back home and feed it. I was like, wait, what?
It's a job.
Yeah, they call them, idiot cubes. So anyway, that was really, and now, I mean, I still have small square bales, but not as much. And last winter was it was a long winter, and then Buck had surgery in February, and he wasn't supposed to do anything. So I had some help feeding, and we put big square bales on the back of the truck, and then we feed off the truck. And we usually feed up on top of the ranch, but we couldn't get up there this year because there was like 5 feet of snow on the road. And we couldn't plow it. But in the driveway, I plowed it probably twice a day for 2 months because the wind would blow the snow in. And I was like, oh my gosh. And Buck had to recover, so he wasn't a lot of help. But, I've learned how to drive all the equipment, much to my dismay. I swore I wasn't going to drive the skid steer. I was like, I'm not going to learn how to drive that one. I'm just not going to do it. But then, of course, I did because I had to. But so,
right. So here's my big question for you, Mary, because I love hearing these stories, and it's very. I have such an admiration for how you have kept things going right while Buck's out doing his deal. When you guys were dating, and then I know you said you got married in '92, did you guys have a game plan? Like, okay, well, we'll buy this big ranch, and then I'm gonna hit the road, and then you're gonna have to take care of this ranch, and that'll be good
while you're at it.
Yeah, well, because the way I look at it, that as someone who just recently got engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I find that would be a tough sell, right? So maybe I wouldn't put it in quite that way, but was that the plan from the beginning? Was there a learning curve? You bought the ranch, and then it was well, I got to do all these clinics, and then we got to do this, and it honestly kind of speaks to y'all's relationship that you've been able to make that work. And it's really impressive to me. So I'd love to hear how that started and then how it got to where it is now.
Well, that's interesting. We did not have a plan, but when we got married, I don't even know. I don't even know. Buck had a house in Bozeman. It was a little house on 5 acres, and he was going to build an indoor arena. I'm like, oh no, don't do that. Not on 5 acres, but so anyway, our friend Susie Puckett found a place. This place was for sale, and Buck bought it without even looking at it. So he just bought it. I was like, wait, you bought it sight unseen? I'm like, oh no. So I come to Sheridan, and I walk in the front door of that house, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of property, but the house had cats in it. It was terrible. I was like, oh my gosh, Buck, whoa, why did you buy this place? So there wasn't really a plan, but so then we that was December 93. So we just tore apart the house and remodeled it. And so I was pregnant with Riata, And yeah, I was staining and varnishing, with a gas mask on and painting. And so we completely redid the house. And then Buck left in February. He always leaves he leaves on Valentine's Day usually. And of course, I was by myself and I'm thinking, uh-oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
So around comes March 30th and Riata decides to make an appearance. So I drove myself to the hospital, had the baby, drove myself home, did the chores, and then the rest is history. I mean, I don't know, just fell into the role of being the caretaker. And I have my feeling about horses and dogs is that they come first. They're before me. They eat before me. I take care of them before me. Everything is about them. And so, and the ranch, it too. I mean, I've got myself into this. This place owns me because I have a huge garden, flower gardens everywhere. And of course, this year I haven't been able to keep up with anything because the rain was so crazy, as you well know, in May and June, that it just it's out of control. But so I never even questioned it. I just decided, that was my role, and so I took care of it. I grew up in an Air Force family, so my dad was never home, and so my mom took care of everything always. So that could be why, I have the same thinking. Of course, my mother didn't have to take care of any animals like I do, but she probably thought. I remember she would always say to us, "What are you doing? Why are you taking care of horses?" What? Both my sister and I, have horses and dogs, and my sister doesn't have any kids though, so she just takes care of animals. But uh, I just, I just, I don't know. I love living here in Sheridan. It's a beautiful place, and I have a lot of really nice friends. And Buck is on a mission to keep, people. He wants to make it the best place for horses ever. And there's so many things that could be done. You just see people that do things to horses. You're just like, whoa, wait, come on, there's a better way. And it's common sense. So just follow a good way of doing things with horses. Anyway, that's why I never go anywhere anymore either, because we have so many horses. I think we have 40 horses. I lose count. I count them. I write them all down, and they're mostly Riatas now. But yeah, so I've been taking care of them. Right now, there's like 25, maybe 26 out in the back pasture, and Buck just went and looked at them, but they all look good. The grass is ridiculous. It's like 6 feet tall. The grass is insane this year.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying the podcast, pause, if you would, for a moment and head over to Spotify or Apple. There you can leave us a review and follow the podcast. We're also on the social platforms. We're on Instagram and Facebook, so you can follow us or like us there. And folks, this really helps us out. It helps us keep growing the channel. It allows us to bring on fresh guests and continue to make this content for you guys. We appreciate all the support. Thank you.
But anyway, it's just been it's amazing how fast 30 years have gone by. I'm like, wait, what have I been doing for 30 years? Taking care of the horses and dogs and kids. And, in the meantime, I had the 3 children that I was maintaining. So, and off they all went to college and graduated. And yeah, this is a big job. Now what? Now what am I going to do? I mean, I still have horses. And next year, so the kids, I told them not to breed any more horses, and they bred 8 more mares. And I'm like, wait. I don't want to do that. But so here I am doing it again. So,
Yeah.
Buck's going to Spain in October, and I have an old Jack Russell, so I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to go because he's, I've had him for 16 years, so I can't really leave him with anybody. So, and my very good friend that used to take care of my dogs passed away a couple years ago, so it was very unexpected of her to pass away, and so I just haven't. I don't trust anybody to take care of my animals. It's terrible. It's hard to have horses that, I've had people take care of horses, and you come home and I had one guy take care of our horses one time we went can't remember where we went, but I came home and the watering system was frozen, and it was a culvert, and it had a pump in it, and so the water was always moving, and only it was a 6-foot high ice sculpture when we got home, and that guy had never noticed that the water was freezing and turning into an ice sculpture. I'm like, wait,
Jeez.
did you not notice that the horses didn't have water? So yeah, it's too hard to find anybody who's really dedicated. They're always something. But
yeah, that's a rare trait these days, finding someone that you can really trust with your homestead.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you pay them a large salary, you can finally find somebody. But
yeah,
I'm not willing to do that yet. I would like to have somebody that would stay here, but still, even then, you have your dogs, and dogs are hard.
yeah,
They're hard.
yeah. And it's different. There's very few people, because I find this just at our ranch all the time, is even if someone is trying and doing a job, there's very few people that will approach something and take care of something like it's their own. And those people you got to hold on to quite a bit, because they're those are usually also the people that have a good enough head on their shoulders that they're going to go and get their own little homestead and build up something for themselves.
Well, that's what happened when Isaac, he worked for us for a while. He lived with me, and then he went to school in Bozeman. But when he was here, I could trust him with the dogs because the dogs loved him. So, but then we went to my oldest daughter's wedding, and Isaac was here with his dog, and one of our dogs that Riata had conveniently said, "Mom, can you watch this dog and give it a home?" And I was like, "No, I don't want any more dogs." But so she's still here. But Isaac's dog and our dog Sweep went on a walkabout. They left, and Isaac was frantic. He couldn't find them. They went like a couple miles away, and some lady across the highway found Sweep, and but she didn't keep her. She just called the number and said, "Hey, I have this dog here," but then she let her go. So Isaac was frantic, and he actually, they came back the next morning, but he was like, "Oh my gosh, I've let the dogs go." I was like, "It's okay. It's okay. Well, they'll be back. And if not, oh well." And now I have a fenced yard but Buck's dog jumps out of it. So, we have a fenced yard for Jack Russell's, but, and then we built a barn in 2020. And really, Buck is, I think he's a throwback to King Arthur or something, and had to have a stone barn. So we have a completely stone barn, and it has a dog kennel in it, but I don't keep the dogs in there. So it's a beautiful barn. Buck's pride and joy. So, it's not a big barn. It's only 3 stalls. Because we don't stall our horses at all, usually, unless there's something wrong with them. So last year, Ark got impaled on a stick, and Ark's 24, and I don't know, it was terrible. He had a huge hole right along the edge of his tail, in that muscle that runs along their rump. It was like, what did you do? And so he had to be in the stall for a couple months, and until I could get that thing to heal up. But oh my gosh, it was like in the middle of winter, you impaled yourself on it. I'm sure it was on a tree stick somehow, but yeah, it was. So that's the only time we've used the barn. So,
what could you go into a little bit why a stone barn? I mean, you kind of just said you don't know, but like that really surprises me, especially where you guys live.
Well, it's a beautiful barn, and Buck fell in love on the Wallop place, which is Senator Wallop. Sheridan has this amazing history, and the Wallop family. The Wallops came from England. Noel Wallop came from England, because I think he was like the 5th brother. He didn't have a job per se, kind of like Harry. Didn't have a job, so he came to the United States, and I think he got involved in breeding the cavalry horses. And so the Wallops barn, which is up against the face of the mountain, is beautiful stone barn. It's beautiful. And actually, John Kendrick, who is the also a senator from Wyoming, who was from Texas originally, built these amazing stone buildings. So the OW Ranch where Riata is got some beautiful stone buildings on it, and a barn it's all giant logs that was built in the 1800s. And but the LX Bar, which is a place that's on the Powder River that was John Kendrick's, is all beautiful cut stone. I mean, this place is amazing. And so Buck, he loves stone. He just loves stone buildings. So we got the builder here and John Ventisher from Big Fork, Montana, to come and build the barn. And then I have a little greenhouse that's next to it that's a third stone. It's not all stone, but it is beautiful. It's all cut stone. You know, it took them, I don't know, 6 months to build the stone, or put the stone up. Every morning, those stonemasons would be here clinking, clink, 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 you know, cutting the stone and putting it on. And it really is a beautiful barn. So, yeah, you could live in it. So it's got a bathroom, tack room, and a dog room, and 3 stalls. So it's not real big, but it is beautiful. But so, you know, Buck he's really good friends with Jim Gercio. That's where Riata's working now. She and her husband are managing the OW Ranch. And Jim Gercio, who is of Caribou Recording Studio fame, owns it. And he's from Boulder, and he had Caribou Recording Studio, which is up above Boulder, where everybody who was anybody in the rock and roll business recorded their albums there. Elton John, Michael Jackson. I mean, the list is long of how many people recorded there, but he bought the OW in 1991 and restored it to its, you know, a kind of its original state. But the kids have gone in, and Riata and Gabe, they've built cedar fences all the way around it. It is a beautiful setting. And so that's Buck he loves that stone building. So it's you know, and I love it. It's a beautiful building. So
that's awesome.
Now I want our house to match, but it doesn't. But we have cultured stone, like the fireplace behind me. That's, you know, fake stone.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's really. I feel like it's a privilege to live here in Sheridan because it's the home of a lot of amazing saddle makers and bit makers, and you know, there's so much art here, and Jim Jackson, who worked at King's Forever and King's Saddlery, and you know, there's just so many things to do here, you know, outside of horses that, you know, I think most of the people, and polo, you know, polo's huge here. We have the Bighorn Equestrian Center and then the Flying H Polo. And the Argentinians come up here and play at the Flying H. You know, it's all high goal polo, and it is the most beautiful spot where they play polo. So right at the base of the Bighorn Mountains. So it's I really am glad we moved here, because I grew up in Boulder, in Colorado, and you know, we had horses, but we kept our horses at a different place, and you know, my dad would drop us off, and we'd hang out with the horses all day long, but we didn't have a ranch or anything. And my dad almost bought us a ranch, and he said, "Oh, you girls, you just run off with some boy." And then I'm like, "Dad, you're so wrong. we would have loved to have had a ranch, you know, when we were kids, but
yeah,
I know it's not very many people get to grow up on ranches, and it's hard work. It is really hard work, you know, to keep things going. I just think you have to be of a different sort to be able to live on a ranch and maintain it. And ours isn't really a ranch because it's not very big, but like the OW and the Padlock, you have to have a big crews to take care of it. And there's always something to do. You keep busy 24/7. So it's a job. And my dad, so I grew up with my uncle won the Hamiltonian in 1956, and it was a trotting horse trainer for most of his life, and it was at the Ben White Raceway in Florida, and then or in Lexington, that's where that is, Lexington. In Florida, he also was at where was he? Orlando. Anyway, And then my grandfather was in the 7th Cavalry and started the mounted cavalry unit at Kent State University. And then
That's cool.
my dad was in the cavalry, and he was a show jumper. And so I have a picture of him, and I have the trophy that he won at Fort Riley, Kansas, at the troop headquarters show in 1938. So, but his last maneuvers were against Patton, right before World War II started. But he applied to be a Army Air Corps. He wanted to go into flying, so he got into the Army Air Corps and went to pilot school and learned how to fly. But so his horse career stopped right there. He didn't really get into horses like his brother. So, but he always let us have horses when we were growing up. So that was really amazing. But so that horse DNA can be in you at the beginning of your life for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe your father was one of the Doolittle Raiders, wasn't he?
Yes. So then, they all applied they were all pilots in training, and he was, General Doolittle saw them. They were all where were they? They all volunteered for the mission to go on the Doolittle Raid, not knowing what they were going on. So they trained at Pendleton Field in Pendleton, Oregon. And it's interesting, I have the license plate. So he was based out of Texas. Well, my dad grew up in Ohio. That's where all a lot of the flyboys were from Ohio, because General Doolittle was, he won the Thompson Trophy races, and he was, my dad got to see him win that race, so he became infatuated with being a pilot. So anyway, went to Texas to flight school, and then they went to Pendleton Field, which I have his license plate from 1941 from Texas, and then on the plate is a little tag that says Pendleton Field. So they were all, learning how to fly the B-25s up there. And then they would fly from Pendleton, Oregon. They went all the way to Eglin, Florida, where they learned how to do short takeoffs on the runways. And so the flyboys, they were all so into being pilots. And then when when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they were all just like, here we go. And so General Doolittle asked for volunteers from that bombardment group. And so they all volunteered, not knowing what they were going to do. And they did not know until, they probably had a small inkling of what they were doing, because they were low-flying bombers can you imagine a bomber coming right over the top of you? So that's what they would do. They'd fly over the cows and people, try to scare people. I would be like, whoa, what was that? Anyway, so when they all got to, they were all in Los Angeles at a party, and when Pearl Harbor happened, and so they were called to duty to go back up to Pendleton, and then they took all the planes to California, to what's the name of that, the Presidio, and they put those planes on the Hornet, on the USS Hornet. So 16 B-25s on the deck of the Hornet, and then as they were going out through the bay, then General Doolittle said, we're going to go bomb Tokyo, and so they were like, yay, we're doing that. So it was the first major offensive against the Japanese, after they attacked us, and they had no idea that we could do that, because they had bombed all of the battleships at Pearl Harbor, so they thought we were defenseless. So anyway, they all took off early, because they were spotted by a Japanese fishing boat. So, and those seas were very rough the morning that they left, and they just all got off the air, and then they flew low on the deck of the ocean. And then when they got to Japan, they flew up to, I'm not sure what the altitude was, and then dropped their bombs on specific targets. There were rail yards, oil refineries. They weren't allowed to touch any of the presidential palaces at all. So they were, they had significant places where they were bombing. And then they flew back, got down on the deck and flew to China. And one plane flew to Russia. 2 planes crash landed on the beach. And then the rest of them, they all bailed out of their planes over China. So you can imagine, here these guys are all in their 20s. They jump out of their airplanes, not knowing where they were going to be over China. And they were all taught how to say, "I'm an American." And of course, they did not know how they knew how the Chinese guerrillas were dressed and how the Japanese soldiers were dressed. So if they saw somebody, they could identify that they were Japanese. And my dad came upon friendly Chinese, and they took him in, and they actually housed him. And then those friendly Chinese took most of those Doolittle Raiders out, got them into a cave. They stayed in this big cave, and then it took them from April 18th to like June 10th to get back to the United States. So they went the long way around. They got out of Southeast Asia, flew to New Delhi. Then they went to, it was interesting, Timbuktu, Cairo, Rio, and then to Florida. And that's how they got home. So
Wow.
it was, and then some of them were captured by the Japanese. So, which was, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Unbroken. That they talked about the whole, the Japanese, how they tortured, anyway. But there was one of the guys that was captured by the Japanese. Jake DeShazer was his name. It's an amazing story. I wish they'd make a movie out of this, but he was prisoner of war for 40 months, and they tortured him, and they gave him a Bible. He memorized the Bible. And it's interesting, he was from Merced, Oregon, kind of where Tom Dorrance was from. Anyway, he swore that if he got out of there alive, he would go back to Japan and become a missionary, which he did for 35 years. But the cool story is that he became best friends with Fuchida, who led the raid on Pearl Harbor, who was dissatisfied with the Japanese, and he became a farmer. And so Jake DeShazer and Fuchida became lifelong friends, which was, what are the odds of that, where those two would meet each other and become friends. And they both were actual missionaries, and, went around to all of the people trying to convert them to Christianity, which was a very cool story. But
wow.
Anyway, so then my dad came home. He did a lot of things. My dad, during the Cold War, I was born in Newfoundland, and he was based out of Newfoundland in the Northeast Command, and he would fly C-154s from Greenland, or from Newfoundland to Greenland to Denmark, the big circle, and he was protecting the dew line from the Russians, because the Russians were coming then. And so it's funny, the only movie he ever went to see was The Russians Are Coming, which is a comedy. But
I've seen
anyway, so then after that, he it's pretty funny. Anyway, he was in the Civil Air Patrol when we lived in Colorado, and then he retired and moved to Boulder, and just became the local hero. So that was pretty fun. So anyway,
Wow.
Yeah, there's some great stories. So one of the kids I used to babysit, his grandfather got the congressional, or the Medal of Honor. He was on the island of Tawara, and I didn't know this at all while I was babysitting them. And his grandfather, of course, was killed right as they came off the ships. They get off of those U-boats, and they die instantly because the Japanese were hiding in tunnels. And anyway, the young man that I babysit was the editor of the Boulder Camera, and he went back to the island of Tawara with the honor flight and an archaeologist, and they found his grandfather's grave, and they exhumed him, and they found that it was him because he had gold teeth, because he was from Knoxville, Tennessee, and he had joined the military when he was 31 years old to fight the Japanese. But and he wrote a book called The Bones of My Grandfather, which, what an amazing story that they found him right away. And then they brought him back home and buried him in Knoxville, Tennessee with military honors. But that's a story that I never knew about until much later in my life. And I found out about that, and he wrote a book, and it's a pretty interesting book. So, yeah. And yeah, there's so many stories. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Was that something your father had a hard time talking about, the war?
Oh yeah, he never talked about it particularly to us at all. But I think they'd have a reunion every year, and which was the kids, we got to go to one reunion when we were kids, but I think we had way too much fun, and so they said, don't bring your kids anymore. So, but as an adult, I got to go. I took my dad to quite a few of the reunions, and I actually took Buck's foster mother Betsy with me to Ohio to Wright-Patterson, and we went to the reunion there, and she was so funny. She sat at a table, and she had this group of men around her, and they were all talking war stories because her husband had been in the war. He was in the Army. So anyway, it was really fun to see. And then General Mosley was the head of the armed services at that time, and she walked up to him. We were in a room with him, and she said, "Oh, son, you're doing a fine job." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, there's Betsy talking to the chief of staff of the Air Force." And it was really cool. But then I got to go to San Antonio with my dad one time, and they let me fly a B-25 over San Antonio, which was a pretty amazing experience. Yep, they put me in the pilot seat, but they let me fly it and go around the city of San Antonio. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so scary, but what a thrill. That was a thrill.
Wow. Yeah. Did you ever have aspirations of becoming a pilot yourself?
That was pretty amazing. And then, yeah, no, I wish I would have. So Gabe's sister, Jamie, is a pilot. She flies the C-17s. And, she flies, like she flew some of the big planes over to Afghanistan and, doing missions, taking things over there, which is amazing. She's a cool person. But, that it takes somebody, of course, flying anymore, I think, is probably not as hard as it used to be. Those B-25s, they were like, driving an old tractor. The controls were like, my dad's arms were huge. From his elbows down, he had Popeye arms. So he, because I'm sure from pulling on the steering wheel, he was pretty amazing. So anyway, Buck is turning on something. Buck.
Yeah, he's messing with our audio quality here.
Yeah, Buck. What he's doing. He needs to go in his office and do that. He's got an office. But so what else do you want to talk about? Anything particularly?
Well, Ben, you go first, Ben. But I have stuff if you don't have anything, Ben.
Sure. Yeah, I'll come.
But I didn't want to cut off the airplane talk. If you had more questions about that, is what I meant.
Oh, yeah, not really in particular. Yeah, I was just wondering because when you said you flew that plane, you seemed like you were pretty excited that you had done that. So I thought maybe you had aimed yourself at pilot at one point.
Yeah, no. If anybody ever gets to go to Wright-Patterson, there's the Air Force Museum there, and it's 5 hangars of airplanes. That's where the Memphis Belle is. They took her from Memphis because she was falling apart and took her up there and completely restored her. So that museum is the most incredible museum. It's got, it's free. You get to go there for free. So if anybody ever gets to go there, it's really
and that's place. In Memphis?
No, that one's in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio.
It's in Ohio. So, yeah. But it's, that airplane thing, kind of wish I would have maybe gotten into a pilot, but, it just wasn't in the cards at that time. Those silly horses got in the way.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah.
Well, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because before the, running this whole ranch and the heck of a job that is, you were like an actress and a model, weren't you?
Back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So how'd you get into that?
Well, so let's see. How did I get into that? I had a friend whose mom said, "Oh, you should go be a model." So I took some pictures in Boulder, and then the place was JF Images in Denver, and so I went down there, went to the modeling school, and of course you have to go to modeling school, and you have to pay for it, and then I had my headshots done by this very famous photographer in Denver, and then so then they put you to work. So you just start working. You do local ads, and then I got into doing national ski ads, and so I did a lot of different ads, for national companies. And then in when was that? 77, I went to New York, and I lasted 10 days. I signed with Eileen Ford, to model, and I just couldn't hack it. I was like, oh, I'm from Boulder. I can't stand this place. It was, concrete. I just did not fare well there. So I came home, and then I went to work at King Soopers, stacking groceries. And then I got some. I started modeling more again, and then I got some different national TV ads through Denver, and then 1980, I went to Los Angeles. I lasted 2 years there, barely, but so I just wasn't really cut out for that lifestyle. But so when I was in Los Angeles, though, I worked at Will Rogers Polo Club, and it was up at Pacific Palisades, Will Rogers Place, which was amazing. And so it was during the Screen Actors Guild strike, kind of like what's going on right now. They've got a strike going on. So I get there, and then they all go on strike, and I'm like, oh, well, this is really fun. Thanks a lot. So then I did do a Wrangler jean ad, and then I was cast for Hill Street Blues, but I didn't do it. So then I just started. I just did, modeling ads instead of. I didn't really want to be in the TV. I did Fantasy Island, which was. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. So then in 19, I moved back to Colorado. I was like, so then I started modeling again in Denver, and then the Denver Broncos hired me to ride their horse, or not the Denver Broncos. I take that back. Channel 9, who sponsored the cheerleaders for the Denver Broncos, all the cheerleaders got in trouble, so they fired them all. They were called the Pony Express. So then they needed someone to manage their little horse, which was a little miniature stallion, which was really goofy. What? The Broncos have a miniature stallion as their mascot? Okay. So the lady from Channel 9, who I knew from showing at her barn in Loveland, Colorado, she called me and asked me if I would handle him. And I said, oh, sure, I do that. No problem. And then I said, but what do I have to wear? She goes, oh, we'll have an outfit for you. Ha! I was like, ah! So get me this outfit, which is like ridiculous. Short shorts, little, it was really silly. And so I did that one for that first season. And then Edgar Kaiser bought the team from the Phipps. And he called me and said, hey, can you get a white stallion for free? And can you write it at the games? I'm like, well, I don't think I can get a white stallion for free. I was like, where am I going to find a white stallion? Anyway, I did find a white quarter horse gelding, and his name was Grease, and I used him, and I rode him in all the Bronco games that year. Yeah, and then I modeled. I didn't do any more television after that. It was just I wasn't cut out for it. I just wasn't, I didn't have that personality. So, which is too bad. I could have maybe done some things, but it was silly. It's silly, that all that stuff, and like Yellowstone. Oh my gosh, that program, it just irritates me to know. I mean, you know, and everybody loves it, but I'm like, come on, you're portraying people. Why don't you portray them the right way? So 1883, though, I did like that. It was, you know, it was a little more believable. Yellowstone, I was like, come on, they don't do that. Remember when I mean, you know, taking them to the library or the train station, and you know, Taylor Sheridan, you know, he's a pretty amazing writer, and now he's doing a spin-off on the Four Sixes, which I don't know what that one's going to be called. The Four Sixes. Remember, that's where Jimmy goes, and is that his name, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Goes to the Four Sixes.
Yeah.
And he's the most unbelievable character there is. I'm like,
yeah.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
and then we just watched another show called The Lioness that Taylor Sheridan is writing for, or did, which is really kind of scary. But anyway, I mean, you know, there used to be a show called Yellow Rose of Texas, and it was Sybil Shepherd and who else was in that? Was it Buck? Who was in that? Anyway, it was a great show. It was more ranching, you know, about ranching. But, you know, they got to make it crazy. And Yellowstone is like, you know, it's amazing how many people love that show.
Oh, well, I was having a conversation today with someone about Yellowstone, and it took me forever. Like Ben and Bill, they would always ask me like, "Have you watched Yellowstone? Have you watched Yellowstone?" I'm like, "No, I don't know that show." Da da da. And then finally, I broke down from the peer pressure and watched it, and I was like, "This is just The Sopranos set in Montana."
Exactly.
Like that is what the show is. It's almost exactly the plot of The Sopranos, but then they all have cowboy hats.
Exactly. Well, in 1883, so there's some of the storyline of that is kind of like what happened to John Kendrick, you know, in Montana, because they had the cattle and sheep wars here. So it's amazing. Maybe Taylor Sheridan, and he actually did come here, Taylor Sheridan. He probably read some of the books about Slaughter on the Otter. There's a book called Slaughter on the Otter where they went in and they killed all the sheep. And that's kind of what they did in 83. You know, they would go in and kill all the sheep. But anyway, well, I don't know. What's the next sequel is what, 1923, right?
Yeah,
that's with
I think
Harrison
1923 is where they went and
killed
all the sheep, right? But that 1883, that was a little bit unbelievably woke, though, too. I mean, you had the Indian guy and the girl wearing the Indian pants.
Yeah.
And, like, you know,
it
got a little bit.
No way.
Like where Hallmark meets woke, meets Western, meets kind of unbelievably, like, supernatural. It was weird. I don't know. Kind of lost us.
Stephen Yellowtail, you know. Stephen Yellowtail was the stunt rider for that guy, that Indian guy. And he's from here. He's way more believable than, you know, but yeah, that was, the whole thing was so far-fetched. You're just like, wait. Well, it's kind of like the horse whisperer, you know, in the end of the book, the horse whisperer dies, you know, but at the hands of a horse or at the hooves of a horse. The horse kills him, you know, in the book. You're like, wait a minute. Self-sacrificed himself? Buck Brannaman would never do that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't, you know, let a horse kill him. Anyway, that, you know, sometimes the writers get a little bit out of their heads, I think.
Yeah. Well, what about the Horse Whisperer movie? Because that seems more believable. It's a beautiful movie. But what are some things in that you would have liked to see done differently?
Well, Buck, you know, had a hand in that. So he wrote some of the storylines. He helped Redford. So pretty much, you know, that part of it, you know, it actually was well done. I mean, you know, that the wreck was a little bit more than I could stand, you know, and in the beginning, the horse getting hit by the semi was a little bit, whoa, like, wait, that horse would have died. Anyway, it was, you know, it was a good movie, you know, and it ended like it should have. You know, she went back to her family, and then Tom Booker, he went back to what he was doing before he met her. So it was, you know, I thought it was well done, and the music was amazing. So, and Redford let us all be in it. You know, got to be at the dance, and then we got to be in the scene where they're all eating. So it was, you know, it was fun. So that was a summer of whatever year that was, 93, 90. When was that, Buck? I can't remember anymore the days. Oh, hard to remember all that stuff. So
Yeah, that's a lot of life.
yeah. When did that movie come out? 97, right? I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And then Cindy Meal did Buck the film, which, that was a good film too. So it was fun, kind of.
Yeah.
She left it. So, but anyway.
Wow.
Any more stories? And I was going to tell you all my horses. I know we just let our horses. We just worm them twice a year. I haven't had to vaccinate anything because we have a pretty much closed system. Buck vaccinates his horses, but everything here, like rabies, we'll vaccinate for if there's a onslaught of rabies. But I keep all the horses they're in a tight group, so they don't generally get sick. So I don't have any issues. I haven't had any issues too much, with horses. Actually, Brianna had bought a mare off the track. She came from All Reds in Santa Anita, California, and somehow that poor mare went to Evanston, Wyoming, where she was a race. I don't know if they raced her or because the All Reds were all race horses, quarter horse race horses. And then so this mare came to me, and Riata purchased her from Woody's Feeds, and she came to me and she was starving to death and pregnant. And I was like, oh, this is making me so mad. So I had her and I kept her in a corral and I fed her. And then she had a baby a week later after we got her. She looked terrible. I've never seen him, it's just like, why, if you're going to breed horses, you got to take care of them. Don't just let them try to, take care of themselves. Anyway, she had this colt and he was a Corona Cartel something. I'm not sure what his sire was, but that colt lasted 3 weeks, a failure to thrive. And then Isaac came down and helped me from school and take care of him. And then he died 3 weeks later, which was very frustrating to me. But that mare this year, she colicked and died because it was so cold. And I don't think she was drinking. And she was old, 22, I think. But, I had taken care of her for the last. Shooter is her baby. So she's had 3 babies here, 4. So and so it was very distressing to me to have her die. She just died. Buck and I looked out the next morning and she was laying out there dead. So that was, I don't like it when that happens on my watch. But anyway, she had a rough life. So, but I took really good care of her in the interim. So it's like I said before, my horses are really important, and I try to take the best care of them as I can. We don't have very many issues with them. Most of them are all pretty healthy. So
yeah.
What so you mentioned buying hay and stuff. Do you guys have like pastures you rotate in the summer, or do they all run together, or like how do you kind of manage them on the ranch, like as one herd, or what do you guys do there?
So the big herd of horses is in the back at what we call the big reservoir pasture, and there's a lot of grass there this year, so they're all back there. And then Guapo and 2 mares are on the little pasture out front, and then Easy and his 2 mares are by the barn, and so the grass is actually getting pretty eaten down around the house. But back in the back, we've got a lot of grass back there. So and then we start feeding generally. Well, I start feeding once it starts to snow. It's usually end of October, beginning of November. And then I feed pretty lightly because I want them to still go out and graze as much as they can. Because there's a lot of grass in this front pasture behind our house. There's a lot of grass there, but we have a lot of weeds too because it's been the rain was insane this year. But so then hopefully we won't have too many more horses, so we don't have to rotate pastures. But
That's what they all say.
yeah, well, Rihanna's got a lot of horses up there at the OW too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's handy to have a giant ranch like that
yeah,
nearby.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And they've got a lot of grass this year. It has rained after the clinic in June. They all went up there and branded, and it rained every single day, like a monsoon. which was, so the grass up there is, and it's been a drought for the last 10 years up there. So, it looks beautiful now. It's still green up there too. So it's just now starting to turn, which we haven't had any rain for a couple weeks. So, yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
So
horses.
What about? I know we talked about Buck's horses and stuff. From all these horses you bred, did you take any horses for you? I mean, I know we talk about Billy Bob being your colt, but how does that dynamic work? Have you had some horses that were yours in your ride, or?
Well, I had a few, and then I had one. Buck bought me a horse, which was kind of funny. So he bought a horse, and he was turned out in the back with all the other geldings, and I think he succumbed to the toxicity of he wasn't used to being on the water here, and I brought him all in, and he wasn't well. So I took him to the vet, and they could not figure out what was wrong with him. His liver just quit working, and I was like, he must have either eaten something toxic or the water, because a lot of times the horses, if they're not used to the water, I don't really know. Anyway, I tried to keep him alive for a week, and we did everything we could, and then we just put him down because he was suffering. So that's the last horse I had, and I haven't ridden forever, so because I'm too busy taking care of. And when Buck leaves, I won't ride by myself. I'm like, why would I do that? Because I don't want somebody to find me somewhere dead. So I don't go ride out by myself. So anyway, I haven't, actually, Boozy's supposed to be mine. Boozy was supposed to be mine originally, and then he was a stallion, so we kept him a stallion, bred him to a couple mares. Then Rihanna took him to California. Then she brought him home. We gelded him, and then Buck took him. So there. Now Buck's got him. So it's okay though. I'm good. If I went with Buck, then I would ride. But since we have all this upkeep here and animals,
it's a lot to say grace over. I wouldn't have time to ride.
Yeah,
I don't think I could do it, to tell you the truth. I'm still amazed you take care of all that.
Yeah. the mowings. I mow here and over at the barn, and I mowed the other day at the barn, but the bindweed has just taken over, and I haven't been able to get to it. So, man, it is a lot of work.
Do you at least have, I can't believe we're having this, I'm asking this on this podcast, but do you at least have a nice zero turn mower or something? That? Yeah, good.
I have a Kubota, big zero turn, and then I have my bridle horse mower. I call it my bridle horse. That is a walker, and it's a thatching machine. So it's like a cool machine, and I just do the front yard and the backyard with that. And the grass is too thick right now for it, so I use the Kubota mostly. But yeah, my bridle horse mower. Yeah, Buck has definitely, kept me well. I have the best equipment: tractors, skid steers, bobcat, mowers, truck. I have a Ford truck, and a Jeep. I have a Jeep truck.
I was admiring your Jeep at the clinic. I was like, that is a nice ranch vehicle.
It is. It's really handy because you can park it in town. It's got little turning radius is real easy. You can. I don't know how much you can haul in that, but I've hauled 15 bags of grain. It's kind of makes it kind of go up in the front, but and then that way I can get, if I need to get hay somewhere, well, I get it from Susie's, but they usually bring me the hay, so I don't have to do it. But I have a bobcat too, a tool cat, which is really a really nice piece of equipment because it does everything. It has a dump bed on it and a bucket, and so I really love that piece of equipment. Every girl's dream,
right?
I've heard about your VW. Too. Yeah. So. Are you driving that in the summertime?
Yeah.
I bet that's nice.
I haven't driven it yet. We'll probably take it out it doesn't have any air conditioning in it though, so you got to put the top down, and it's pretty fun. But the original one I drove all over. I drove it to California, back to Colorado. I drove it all over Montana, and then when I get in this one now, I'm like, oh, it's so little. It's a little scary to drive it, so I don't drive it too much. But we go to the Polo in it. It's kind of fun to go to Polo in it. So, which is, yeah. Anyway.
Oh,
yeah. Volkswagens. My dad, he fought the Germans in the war and the Japanese in the war, and we had Japanese cars and German cars, which was really funny. After, yeah. My mom had a Buick, but after that, my dad had Volkswagens and Hondas, which is kind of funny. But anyway.
That is funny.
Yeah. So how's the temperature where you guys are?
Oh, it's pretty hot down here.
Yeah, and humid, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is going to be 95 here today, and it's a little humid here, which it's not normal. Kind of, yeah. I walked outside yesterday. I went, oh, I feel like I'm in Georgia.
Yeah. It's only about 82 here.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, but I'm in Virginia, and it's not as dry as Wyoming, but
no.
we're I think our ranch sits at about 2,000 feet, so we're not as humid as Georgia. Yeah, we're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so it's a little bit nicer.
Yeah, my dad was stationed in Marietta at Dobbins Air Force Base, so I lived in Georgia for a little while. But
okay.
I was only 5 years old, so I kind of remember it. We lived behind the Boeing plant, and there were roses. I just remember the whole fence was covered with red roses. My dad was the commander of the base, so we lived in the commander's quarters, which was nice. But I don't remember, and I do remember parts of Georgia, but not very much. So
yeah.
So I know Buck is kind of a little bit of a World War II buff.
He is? Buck?
That's what I've heard through the grapevine. So was there ever did he ever sit down and pick your dad's brain about this? Was there ever a time where he was more interested in talking to your dad than he was you? Or is that just he's probably too busy thinking about the Denver Broncos model and all that stuff?
I think that Buck may have talked to my dad a couple times, but because we all went down to Dallas for a reunion, and Buck took Shane and who else went with us? The guy from Longmire, the guy who writes Longmire books, went with us. So we all went down to Dallas to the Doolittle reunion down there, and so I know Buck talked to my dad a little bit, but he didn't really have much of an opportunity to talk to him about World War II. But when you think about that whole time, what an amazing time. I mean, people think we're in a bad time now, but man, we had a war on both fronts, the Eastern Seaboard and the Pacific Seaboard, and everybody was at war, and the United States was not doing all that great. But anyway, it was they all the boys joined up and went to war. It was pretty amazing that they all did that, and then they came home and became they just integrated into society again. Most of them, they didn't have a lot of issues. I'm sure there were some people that had issues, but I don't remember my dad ever having any particularly hard times, mentally. Nope. He was a good egg, my dad. He took care of his community, that's for sure. He did community food share. He was always volunteering for things and taking care of other people, and so yeah. And he grew up in Ohio, and his father left his family when they were young and moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and had opened a dairy, but he never came back and took care of his family. So my dad basically went to work and took care of his family, and he had 2 sisters and a brother, and his mother. But he took care of his mother until the day that she passed away. He was, he would always send her money and take care of her and made sure she was. She lived with my aunt, Carrie, who wanted to be a pilot. She wanted to be a pilot. But anyway, they were pretty close-knit family. I didn't get to see my grandmother very much, but I wish she would have come to Colorado more, but she didn't. But my other grandmother, my mom's mom, she lived in Denver. She was a Denver girl, and so I got to spend a lot of time with her. But she wasn't a horsey person. She was, yeah, no, she worked her whole life until she was like 80. She worked for Colorado Badge and Trophy Company in Denver and making letters for letters, sweaters, and stuff. So,
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a question.
Quite the family tree.
Yes.
All right, and you guys bear with me, please. I hate talking about it all the time, but I've got a delay again on this podcast. So after I speak, just give me a second because I might be delayed, and you might, we don't want to talk over each other. So near the beginning of this thing, we were talking about, Buck talking about Ray all the time. But I would say shortly followed by that, Buck talks about you a lot as he's traveling around the country. And I'm sure many people have heard his rendition of the story of him meeting you. And it's interesting on this podcast, we talk to a lot of people in the horse industry, and a lot of them have been touched by Buck's life. And a lot of them, they share with us the first time that they saw him ride, or they share with us, the first time they met him and how he impacted their life. But the cool thing is we have the gal that married him talking to us. So could you tell us what that was like to meet Buck for the first time, and what was your takeaway from that Wyoming cowboy, or Montana cowboy, I guess?
It was Montana.
Yeah.
So, my sister, you should interview her too. She's been a dedicated ray and horseman for her whole life. And that's all she still does is ride. But so Buck was going to be doing a clinic in Boulder. Can't remember the name of that place. Anyway, so I had some horses, but I wasn't really. Mindy, my sister, got me into breeding some horses. I had the Sugar Bars mare, and we bred her to a Frosty Feature, who was a stallion at the time, who had been raced and team roped on and shown as a quarter horse, our halter horse, all at the same time. And so he had gotten his registered merit, so we bred a horse that the Dixie Bar was her name. Anyway, so she goes, "Mary, you should just come watch Buck." And so I went to watch him, and I was like, "Whoa! How is he doing that?" I'd never seen anything like it, And I had never actually even seen Ray, so I didn't really. But I was like totally amazed at what he could do with the horse, and he was just doing, the groundwork, changing eyes. I didn't see him ride. I did. I saw him ride. But the whole working on the ground first was what I was totally amazed at, how much he could get done with a horse. Just a little bit, not just on the ground, changing eyes, doing all that. And then, of course, getting on him and riding him, with nothing happening. So then that was at first. And then, so I sat and talked to him. I had my Volkswagen with me, and it was full of flowers. And we sat and talked for, I don't know, an hour and a half. I was like, whoa. Anyway, totally blew me away. So then that was the beginning of it. And, I'm always fascinated to watch Buck ride. He's totally gifted, talented, and he's really made it his lifelong job to get better at it. I always say to him, what are you doing? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about what to do with the horses. I'm like, what? Stop thinking about it. Why? What? Anyway, it's so, and then you guys, I don't know if you knew that he rode all the colts. 1 year, the colt classes there were 6 horses in each class, and he would ride every colt. He'd do all the groundwork and ride every colt, which was amazing to watch, because they were all different. And that was quite the year. I don't remember what year that was, but it was, I think he was pretty tired at the end of it. But to watch him ride a horse every time, he can get so much done and with so little effort. And there isn't anybody, I don't think, as, of course, I might be a little prejudiced, as good as he is doing it. I mean, there isn't. You know, he's made it his lifelong goal to make it good for the horse. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Even when he rode Billy Bob, I was filming it, but I was like, whoa, he just, was amazing. And I've been able to watch him start all the horses that, we own. So, yeah.
Well, we love him.
It's pretty fast. Yeah,
he's
I
a
know,
great
it's
guy.
good.
I think a very small example is, Joe and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Buck. He's played a huge part in our lives already. So this is awesome talking with you. It's fun.
Oh, thank you, guys. Yeah. I'm sorry it took so long, and I'm sorry my computer's not working. I'm gonna try to get back on it and see what is going on. It was working this morning, but I deleted all my emails and just totally screwed it up. So I shouldn't have touched it.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Well, things take time though.
Anyway.
Get tech support on it when he gets done in his office or whatever.
No, he's probably watching the 5.
Yeah,
5.
Hey, I did want to ask you about that.
Yep.
His tech ability, has that gotten better with him being on Instagram and doing the little videos and stuff like that?
I don't know. I asked him who's doing that for him.
Oh,
because he's got Emma thing. I don't think he's posting.
Okay.
No. I don't think I think he looks at it, but I don't think he posts anything.
But there has been a couple videos, like when he went to Nashville to receive that award with Jim, and he did that little video where he was showing off his cowboy chic, and he couldn't figure out how to turn the camera from the front to the back. But clearly he's mastered that.
Yeah. Buck, did you master that? Well, neither one of us are real techie. I mean, I grew up, or I have Riata, and my other 2 are techie, but I'm just not. The computer, I don't really like it. It takes up too much time, and so does the phone. I mean, I try not to do too much on my phone. In the morning when I have my coffee, I look at it, and then I'm like, I'm out of here. I can't. You're taking up too much of my time. So, and usually my kids can't find me. Where are you, Mom? I'm like, the phone is in the house. I don't have it with me.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. You're living life.
And Buck too.
For real.
That's why he called me. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Well, it's been fun, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been awesome. You've had a lot of good stories. I thought it was going to be a good podcast, but I'm very impressed.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and you should come out here more often. You should come again next year. We're going to move the colt class to the fairgrounds, which is kind of, if it weren't so big and so hard to have all the parking, because, the parking gets a little bit, but the fairgrounds will be a nice place to do it. The original colt class we did at the fairgrounds, and we had it was good. It was fun at the fairgrounds, but I kind of like doing the clinics at home. In 2010, no, what year was that? 2007. Buck did 10 clinics at home, private clinics. So we didn't have any spectators. We just had people, and it was really fun. Because we tore the house down, and so he just stayed home, and we did the clinics at home, and we had a camp set up for everybody to eat there, and it was really fun.
Yeah,
but
that's awesome. Well,
I don't know if we can do that again.
Yeah. Well, y'all were up to your eyeballs in cars at your place this June, so
you couldn't get down the driveway. I was like, oh, that one day I had the stud with me, and I had to get down the driveway, which was very dicey. That was, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get through here. But anyway, it worked out. And the parking up at the fairgrounds will be a lot better. So maybe we can just do private clinics at the house. Or, Rihanna's is trying to get Buck to do clinics up at the OW, which would really be fun.
Yeah, that would be a
Really,
cool setting too.
because it's beautiful up there. Really beautiful. It's a long drive. It's 60 miles, and 22 of it is on dirt road. So you have to drive really slow. But it is. You get up there and you're just like, whoa! There isn't anything up there. Nobody, no nothing. Just a road and grass. So and beautiful views. I mean, it is just. You can see why John Kendrick picked it, to put his ranch there. But I don't know how he did it because his poor wife had to stay there on the ranch, and they were having Indian issues at the time. So he built her a house in town, a mansion in town. Oh. So she got to move to the mansion while he stayed at the ranch.
Oh.
So,
yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. This place is full of cool history, just like everywhere. I mean, I was going to tell you, my dad's grandmother's mother actually passed away early on, and his grandfather married this woman named Maud Marsh, who became the treasurer of Portage County, Ohio. Well, she left my dad with, I have some Confederate money, which is interesting, and a whole bunch of it, which it's from. I haven't even. You
should save it for next time you visit Ben and Bill.
Yeah,
I will.
I was going to say, the way things are going, it might be worth something here pretty soon.
It's pretty, she had all sorts of really cool stuff. I mean, I have a gold piece from 1854 and another one from 1876 or something, gold pieces. And that Confederate money, though, I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Wow.
That's crazy.
Anyway, yeah. Cool. Anyway.
Well, Mary, this has been awesome. We do appreciate you taking time from the busy ranch life to sit and talk with us.
Well, Buck and I are going to go. Maybe we'll go out to dinner and celebrate the fact that we did get it. I got it done this time. So
good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Say hi to Buck for us. Or bye to him, I mean.
All right. You guys take care. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. You too, Mary.
Right. Bye-bye.